Hoo, 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 hoo. Well, aloha there, and it's good to be back, especially with, the usual hassles while streaming, apparently. So, I am back with talking about India. Last time I left was under entomology, so understanding where India, the name, and some other names in India come from. Now we're going to look through the history. Now, let me skim through the history because, Jesus, it's going to be a lot to read. But I can always go through everything in a given pace. So let me cover most of it. History. Ancient India. By 55,000 years ago, the first modern humans, or Homo sapiens, had arrived on the Indian subcontinent from Africa, where they had earlier evolved. The earliest known modern human remains in South Asia date to about 30,000 years ago. After 6,500 BCE, evidence for domestication of food, crops, and animals, construction of permanent structures, and storage of agricultural surplus appeared in Magadha and other sites in what is now Balochistan, Pakistan. These gradually developed into the Indus Valley civilization, the first urban culture in South Asia, and also one of the earlier civilizations in human history. Ancient Egypt, ancient China, ancient Mesopotamia, where pretty much the center of it is Iraq, Tigris Euphrates, around that region of the Middle East and Asia, which flourished during 2500 through 1900 BCE in what is now Pakistan and Western India, centered around cities such as Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Dolva and Kalibangan, and relying on varied forms of subsistence, the civilization engaged robustly in crafts, production, and wide-ranging trade. That pretty much shows everything that's going on around the region in the ancient times. During the period 2000 through 500 BCE, many regions of the subcontinent transitioned from the Chalcolithic cultures in the Iron Age, to the Iron Age ones. The Vedas, the old scriptures associated with Hinduism, were composed during this period, and historians have analyzed these to posit a Vedic culture in the Punjab region and the upper Ganges plain. Most historians also consider this period to have encompassed several waves of Indo-Aryan migration into the subcontinent from the northwest. The caste system, which created the hierarchy of priests, warriors, and free peasants, but which excluded indigenous people from labeling their occupations in peer, arose during this period. On the Deccan Plateau, which is this semblance of rocks, the large Deccan Plateau or Deccan is the south central region of the Indian subcontinent. Because the thing about India is, for a big subcontinent, and that is what it is, entirely of South Asia, where you have India, is a subcontinent because of how rich, diverse it is. The fact that you have very mountainous places next into rainforests and coastal ports, it looks like it's a country that has a lot of different places to visit and enjoy. Archaeological evidence for the period suggests the existence of a chiefdom stage of political organization in South India. A progression to sedentary life is indicated by the large number of megalithic monuments dating from this period, as well as the nearby traces of agriculture, irrigation tanks, and craft traditions. Now, I was going to talk. Okay, now it's just going to show an example of megalith. Like how in Polynesia to the islands of Great Britain have megaliths, even of where they're located in small little countries. let alone ancient Egypt pyramids. But then again, those are more of a man-made type of landmark. But it does show that civilization starts with these landmarks coming to be. In the late Vedic period, around the 6th century BCE, the small states and chieftains of the Ganges Plain and the northwestern regions have consolidated into 16 major oligarchies and monarchs that were known as Panhanjam Pandas. The emerging urbanization gave rise to non-Vedic religious movements, two of which have become independent religions. Jainism came into prominence during the life of the exemplar Mahavira, Buddhism, based on the teachings of Gautama Buddha, attracted followers from all social classes accepting accepting the middle class. Chronically, the life of Buddha was central to the beginnings of recorded history in India. In the age of increasing urban wealth, both religions held up reunification as an ideal, and both established long-lasting monolithic traditions. Politically, by the 3rd century BCE, the kingdom of Magadha had annexed and reduced other states to emerge as the Mauryan Empire. The empire was once thought to have controlled most of the subcontinent except the far south, but its core regions are now thought to have been separated by large dominant areas. The Mauryan kings are known as much of their empire building and determined management of public life. As for Osaka's reunification of militarism and far-flung advocacy of the Buddhist Dharma. So this has happened around the 3rd century. So in the ancient times, this is still happening where empires were rising up. A lot of civilizations were going through India's land and how things are changing. The Sagama literature of the Tamil language reveals that between 200 BCE and 200 CE, so now to the common modern era, well, modern in the sense where it's not the ancient times, the southern peninsula was ruled by the Cheras, the Kolas, and the Pandyas, dynasties that traded extensively with the Roman Empire in the west and southeast Asia. In North India, Hinduism asserted patriarchal patriarchal control within the family, leading to increased subordination of women. By the 4th and 5th centuries, the Gupta Empire had created a complex system of administration and taxation in the greater Ganges plain. The system became a model for later Indian kingdoms. Under the Guptas, a renewed Hinduism based on devotion rather than the management of ritual began to assert itself. The renewal was reflected in the flowering of sculpture and architecture, which found patrons among an urban elite. Classical Sanskrit literature flowered as well, and Indian science, astronomy, medicine, and mathematics make significant advances. So, the thing that still strikes me of how the rise of Buddhism and the kingdom that spread that influence, the teachings, have brought out a recorded history of India and its history. And this was a civilization that pretty much started worshiping and embracing Hindu traditional beliefs. And it's so interesting because of how Hinduism is just such a big religion, just because of how many people are in India, but South Asia, how there is not much evidence of how it formed, how did it begin as recorded history compared to Buddhism. And it's so interesting because of it being a world religion that everybody in the world follows. And also with so much things into the religion. Yeah, it's interesting how there's just not much history under the history of Hinduism, especially in the time when it was starting to form and converting to many people in these beliefs. So, alright, this was ancient India. One picture is an illustration from an earlier modern manuscript of the Sanskrit epic Ramayana, composed in storytelling fashion 400 BCE through 300 CE. So, looking at the picture, they're showing case a battle that, honestly, this is remind me similar to a dot. What is it? not a Dali, but a Picasso painting, but just because of how everything is just forming, just shapes and stuff, and making it out like it is a bloody battle that went through. Now there is the Cave 26 of the rock-cut Ajanta Caves, and boy, for a cave, it looks pretty cool. The Ajanta Caves are approximately 30 rock-cut Buddhist cave monuments dating from the 2nd century BCE to about 480 CE in the Aurangabad district of Maharashtra state in India. So let me actually. It looks like I got to point because I want to know where this region is in India. And it's right here, pretty much around the middle of India, not quite south, not quite north, and I believe it's around the rainforest area. But yeah, it just being cave, natural cave, and spending time to carve it around the time since the ancient times. Shoot. Now those are all the pictures we've gone through. Now let's go to medieval India. The Indian early medieval age from 600 to 1200 CE is defined by regional kingdoms and cultural diversity when Harsha of Kanauj, who ruled much of the Indo-Gangetic, so it's not gang exactly, but it would be Gangetic plain from 606 to 647 CE, attempted to expand southwards. It was defeated by Cholaka, the ruler of the Deccan. When his successor attempted to expand eastwards, he was defeated by the Pala king of Bengal. When the Cholakas attempted to expand southwards, they were defeated by the Palwas from farther south, who in turn was opposed by the Pandas and the Cholas from still farther south. The ruler of this period was able to create an empire and consistently control lands much beyond their core region. During the time, pastoral peoples whose land had been cleared to make way for the growing agriculture economy were accommodated within caste society as well as non-traditional ruling classes. The caste systems consequently began to show regional differences. Yeah, I'm seeing a issue as usual. Just want to make sure that the camera's all doing good. Everything is doing it good. In the 6th and 7th century, alrighty. In the 6th and 7th centuries, the first devotional hymns were created in the Tomi language. They were imitated all over India and led to both the resurgence of Hinduism and the development of all modern languages of the subcontinent. The modern India coming through, especially with Hinduism becoming a dominant religion besides Buddhism. Indian royalty, big and small, and the temples they Pranisht drew citizens in great numbers to the capital cities, which became economic hubs as well. Temple towns of the various sizes began to appear everywhere as India underwent another urbanization. By the 8th and 9th century, the effects were felt in Southeast Asia as South Indian culture and political systems were exported to lands that became part of modern-day Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Brunei, Cambodia, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. India, merchants, scholars, and sometimes armies were involved in the transition. Southeast Asians took the initiative as well, with many sojourning in India's seminars and translated Buddhist and Hindu texts into their languages. Yeah, India, China have a large influence with good portion of Asia, especially when it comes to Southeast Asia. It really does show the mix and blend of these cultures into the society. And what's so interesting is that India, the place where Buddhism existed, is not much of a dominant force in modern day India, but in the rest of Asia, even in China, alongside other beliefs like Taoism, Confucianism, and other Eastern philosophies that dominated around ancient China times. Yeah, that show a sphere of influence these cultures have to one another, even to big ones. After the 10th centuries, Muslim Central Asian nomadic clans using swift horse cavalry and raising vast armies united by ethnicity and religion repeatedly overran South Asia's northwestern plains, leading eventually into the establishment of Islamic Delhi 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 Sultanate in 1206. The also yeah, we're pretty much over the ancient times, so now it's just everything is a sea. Everything is a common era. The Sultanate was to control much of the North India and to make many forays into South India. Although the first disruptive for the Indian elites, the Sultanate largely left its vast non-Muslim subject population to its own laws and customs. By repeatedly repulsing Mongol raiders in the 13th century, the Sultanate saved India from the devastation visit on West and Central Asia. Oh yeah, also, just leaving them just their own laws and customs. Well, they also have to pay taxes and stuff, is usual in societies that deal with small and big ethnic groups and regions, especially in empire. Setting the scene for centuries of migration of fleeing soldiers, learned men, mystics, traders, arts, and artisans from the region into the subcontinent, thereby creating a syncretic Indo-Islamic culture in the north. The Sultanate raiding and weakening of the regional kingdoms of South India paved the way for the indigenous Vijayanagara Empire, embracing a strong Shavite tradition and building upon the military technology of the Sultanate. The empire came to control much of the peninsular India and was to influence South Indian society for long afterwards. In the medieval area, you had different empires, different groups with different beliefs faced in their empires running India, the lands of India and stuff. The Delhi Empire and the previous people trying to deal with whatever they have to deal with during the medieval times in that area of the world. Now, this is early modern India. In the earlier 16th century, so note this is around, 16th century, so that would be around 1500s as usual. We live in the 21st century because it's the 2000s. That's just how it is. But the thing I wanted to also point with the whole century thing is that the 16th century is something a lot of other historians like to put out, where the modern world as we know it exists, even though people think in specific dates and times, but looking overall on human history itself, it would make sense that the modern world as we know it existed around not just the 1500s, but exactly in the 1490s, a decade before the 1500s, because of the discovery of the New World. The New World by discovery of old people from the Old World, like Christopher Columbus' voyage to the New World in what was it, Hispaniola back then, but pretty much it was around the Cuban area. That pretty much brought everybody to understanding that, oh, the whole world is connected to this modern world. So yeah, this is the modern world. This is going to be the modern world of India. In the early 16th century, North India, then under mainly Muslim rulers, fell again to the superior mobility and firepower of the new generation of Central Asian warriors. The resulting Mughal Empire did not stamp out the local societies it came to rule. Instead, it balanced and pacified them through new administrative practices and diverse and inclusive ruling elites. leading to more systematic, centralized, and uniform rule. Eschewing. That's a strange word. Eschewing tribal bonds and Islamic identity, especially under Akbar, the Mughals united their far-flung realms through loyalty expressed through a personalized culture to an emperor who have near divine status. The Mughal state's economic policies, deriving most revenues from agriculture and mandating that taxes to be paid in the well-regulated silver currency, caused peasants and artisans to enter larger markets. The relative peace maintained by the empire during much of the 17th century was a factor to India's economic expansion, resulting in the great patronage of painting, literary forms, textiles, and agriculture. Newly coherent social groups in northern and western India, such as the Marthas, Machaputs, and the Sikhs, gained military and government ambitions during the military experience commerce during Mughal rule gave rise to new Indian commercial and political elites along the coastals of southern India and eastern India. As the empire distinguished, many among these elites were able to seek and control their own affairs. By the early 18th century, I started got caught up with that. Let me practice with some of my voices with my rusty. By the early 18th century, with the lines between commercial and political dominance being increasingly blurred, a number of European trading companies, including the English East India Company, has established coastal outposts. The East Indian Company's control of the seas, greater resources, and more advanced military training and technology led it to increasingly asserted its military strength and caused it to become attracted to a portion of the Indian elite. These factors were crucial in allowing the company to gain control over the Bengal region by 1765 and sidelined to other European companies. Its further access to the riches of Bengal and the subsequent increased strength and size of the army enabled it to annex or subdue most of India. By the 1820s. India was then no longer exporting manufactured goods as it long had, but was instead supplying it to the British Empire with raw materials. Many historians consider this to be the onset of India's colonial period. By this time, the economic power is severely curtailed. Yeah. Wow, that's actually the name. Curtailed by the British Parliament, and having effectively been made an army of British administration, the company began more consciously to enter non-academic arenas, including educational, social performance, and culture. The whole cartel thing brings to me the whole opium war thing, where the British Empire was a cartel because it was selling drugs to local Chinese people because of the opium trade. Now we are into modern era. Let's see how much I have. Okay, it's not much that I could cover at this moment. Now I want to go through medieval India because I forgot to go through the pictures. This picture on this one on the left is Burhandashwara Temple from Tanjavara, completed in 1010 CE. Another one is the Qutub Minar, 73 meters, 240 feet tall, completed by the Sultan of Delhi, Iltutmish. So it does show that they're resurrecting their own structures. It's a landmark of worship? Leaves? Could be. And also they really look similar to the ones in Cambodia and Thailand. Now, this is from the earlier modern India. A distant view of the Taj Mahal from the Agra fort. This is one part of it from here to here, the fort. And these coins, the two Mahor Company gold coin issued in 1835, the observed inscribed William IV King. Now this is from the British East Company. It was not a colonial herding. It was not part of the empire until later on. Especially when it came to, the the rebellion that happened in the mid 1800s, which led the company to dissolve and let the British Empire control it as a colony. Modern India. Historians consider India's modern age to have begun sometime between 1848 and 1885. That's another thing I will point out with the whole modern thing and stuff. So, if we will count today as the modern day, some people would view it as the 1800s, the area where the Industrial Revolution started really happening up around the world, especially in Great Britain, and there's also the U.S., France, having changed the economy, the society, and such because of the Industrial Revolution, as the modern point into today's modern world. But then again, people also say that the modern world we live today now was created up around the 1990s because of the use of the World Wide Web. Some time has passed. Some people are being born with the World Wide Web now, just being part of their lives. It's like, what, 2 to 3 generations now coming through. So, yeah, some people feel that. But in this case, India is had an ancient civilization in its subcontinent. Now we're talking about modern India. The appointment in 1848 of Lord Dalhousie as Governor General of the East India Company set the stage of changes essentially to a modern state. These included the consolidation and demoralization of sovereignty, the surveillance of the population, and the education of civilians. Technology changes, among them railroads, railways, canyons, and the telegraph were introduced not long after the introduction in Europe. However, disaffection from the company also grew during that time and set off the Indian Rebellion of 1857, felt by diverse resentments and perceptions, including invasive British-style social reforms, harsh land taxes, and summary treatment of some rich landowners and princes. The rebellion rocked many regions of northern and central India and shook the foundations of company rule. Although the rebellion was suppressed by 1858, it led to the dissolution of the East India Company and the direct administration of India by the British government, proclaiming in a unitary state as a gradual but limited British-style parliamentary system. The new rulers also protected princes and landed general and a federal safeguard against future unrest. In the decades following, public life gradually emerged all over India, leading eventually to the founding of the Indian National Congress in 1885. The rush of technology and commercialization of agriculture in the second half of the 19th century was marked by economic setbacks and had many farmers become dependent on the whims of faraway markets. These were increasing the number of the large-scale famines, and despite the risks of infrastructure development borne in Indian taxpayers, the industry employment was generated by the Indians. There were also solitary effects. Commercial cropping, especially in the newly consoled Punjab, led to the increasing food production of internal consumption. The railroad network provided by the critical famine relief. The noble reduced the cost of moving goods and helped nascent Indian-owned industry. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to cover all of that because I'm starting to get tired out. There's only so much my voice can cover before it starts becoming quite gibberish, especially with things I had in mind. So, one thing that I had myself in the bog of mind was that the rebellion only lasted around a year, yet it was a rebellion that was quite bloody. It led to the dissolution of the East Company. It brought up the whole question of that existence of the company ruling a big country, that it should be part of a colony, brings everything to a perspective. And also, what it also does show is that there has to be a reason why the British sought that. Seems like Britain has its own agenda in these colonies, these lands that they conquered during that time. Anywho, the time is up, and the time is pretty much up. So, anywho, aloha.